This episode of the AI Inside podcast is sponsored by Your360.ai. Get 10% off through the month of January 2026 when you use the code INSIDE. Ben Goertzel joins us to explain how he coined the term AGI 2 decades ago and what it meant then versus now, what he thinks happens in the period when AI can replace a lot of jobs but society hasn't adapted yet, and why he believes the leap from human-level AI to something radically superhuman could come surprisingly fast. That's coming up right now on AI Inside. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the AI Inside podcast, the show where we take a look at the AI that is layered throughout the world of technology. I'm one of your hosts, Jason Howell. My co-host, Jeff Jarvis, is here. He's going to join us in the moment for the interview. Before we get there, this is a Christmas holiday for those of you who celebrate. A lot of people taking time off. As such, instead of a typical newsy Wednesday episode, Jeff and I decided that we wanted to share this amazing interview that we had little more than a week ago, actually, with a fascinating luminary in the AI industry that you probably heard of. Excited to welcome today Ben Goertzel, who's an AI researcher and entrepreneur. He's best known as the founder and CEO of SingularityNET and a leading developer of the OpenCog framework for artificial general intelligence. Now, Ben has been a long-running voice in AGI research, actually created the terminology artificial general intelligence back in the early 2000s. He's also led applied AGI work in robotics as chief scientist at Hanson Robotics, where he led the software team behind Sophia the robot. Tons to dig into. Let's dive right into our conversation with Ben Goertzel. Super excited to welcome to the show Ben Goertzel. Ben, it is great to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here.
So often on the show, we're talking about topics related to artificial general intelligence, AGI. You're probably used to by now people starting with the fact that you coined AGI, the terminology, more than 2 decades ago,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. And I think one thing that I'd like to start off with is, you coined this term a couple of decades ago, and especially in the last handful of years, I feel like it's become a real kind of calling card for the industry, or maybe not a calling card, but a target, a destination. Maybe it was always the destination, but there's a lot of people throwing the terminology around right now. And I'm curious to know how that squares up with the terminology when you defined it. Like, does this term still mean in 2025, almost 2026, what you intended 2 decades ago?
Mostly, yeah. I think so. The origin story for the meme of AGI had to do with a book I was editing, which was more of an academic volume of research papers dealing with building real thinking machines that could think as well as people, and ultimately even better, right? And my original title for the book was going to be Real AI, but that was always sort of a working title, and I thought that was a bit disparaging to AI applications that were doing highly valuable things, but not aiming at the sort of end game of human level general intelligence. So the contrast Ray Kurzweil drew in his books, and his book, The Singularity is Near, ended up coming out in 2005, the same year as my initial book titled Artificial General Intelligence. Ray, in his prior books, had contrasted narrow AI with strong AI. And that seemed weird because narrow and strong are not antonyms, right? And strong AI had a meaning about consciousness in cognitive science field. So we were just thinking, like, how do we elegantly articulate the difference between narrow AIs that do highly particular things, like play chess or help with your taxes or predict the market, versus AI that tries to do a whole bunch of things across the board like people can do, and continually pivot to doing all sorts of new and different things, right? And so we came up with artificial general intelligence after some discussion. I think one of the co-authors of a book chapter, a guy named Pei Wang, a Chinese guy, suggested GAI, General Artificial Intelligence. And then Shane Legg, who went on later to found Google DeepMind, he had worked for me before that, and Peter Vos, who now runs at AGI Incorporated, they both, as I remember, suggested, let's not do GAI, let's do AGI, right? And so we were pretty much looking for the title of a book, and we put the book out. And in the book, among other things, were some chapters describing mathematical approaches to defining what is AGI. I mean, the crux of which is it's a system that can constantly leap beyond its knowledge and pivot to deal with new things and generalize beyond its experience, right? So like one way to boil this down mathematically is like over all computable environments and all computable reward functions, how smart would you be? And that has to include all sorts of things that were not in your life history or in your experience, right? So I would say the conceptual meaning we had in mind when we titled that book, Artificial General Intelligence, and the mathematical meaning we had in mind in defining what is AGI in the chapters in that book, like those are still totally relevant. What's changed is now various people from a commercial perspective have started introducing new meanings for the term AGI. Like, no, AGI does not mean something that can generalize beyond its history and programming as well as a human. AGI means my company hits $1 trillion market cap, right? Or I mean, like AGI means we can do 95% of human jobs or something. And I mean, all of those things are probably related to AGI, but they're not the same thing as being able to generalize beyond your experience with the agility of a human or even more. But I mean, I would say that, so the core meaning of AGI is understood by the research community hasn't changed. But I mean, as always happens, once the marketeers get a hold of something, it accumulates a bunch of other ad hoc meanings, right? And I mean, and that's just like life extension. Like everyone really knows what life extension means, but you still have like, you know, Dr. Jim Bob's life extension cream that makes your skin look shiny or something.
Can I probe the word general for a second? So I wrote a book about Gutenberg's press, and it's a general machine. There was no telling what all it could be done with it. Right? And I think that's the sense too of AI as a general machine. But I wonder why that has become a goal versus, you talked about narrow AI. You know, the AI already is far beyond human capability when playing Go or protein folding or other things. Or am I misinterpreting here? Is there an appeal for one machine that can generalize, do everything, versus 1,000 machines that can do 1,000 tasks way better than we could imagine?
So yeah, there's a very clear and obvious appeal, but I think that first thing I want to clarify is it didn't become the goal. It was the original goal. I mean, the original goal of the AI field, when the name AI was come up with in the late 1950s, and even before that, say when Norbert Wiener's book Cybernetics came out in the 40s or whenever that was. I mean, the goal was to make digital or analog, like engineered versions of human-like general intelligence, right? So that was the original goal of the AI field. The divergence toward narrow AI happened later, more in the 70s, when people started to realize how hard it was going to be to fulfill the original goal of building human-like thinking machines. I think the other key point I want to make also goes back to the origins of the AI field. So I.J. Good, who, like me, was a mathematician, he was writing in 1965, a year before I was born. He introduced the notion of the intelligence explosion. And what he wrote in 65 was, the first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make. So there's the notion here of self-improvement, self-modification, ongoing expansion. I mean, if we have 1,000 different narrow AIs doing 1,000 different specific things, well, who makes the 1,000 first? Who makes the next one? Who makes the next one? You're still constrained by human inventiveness in creating each of these specialized machines. If you have an AGI that can build its own narrow AIs for different applications, then that is an AGI, which is dealing with how do you customize your own mind or create new artificial minds to deal with unforeseen use cases that may pop up in the future. And that's obviously of much greater value than any fixed collection of narrow AIs that you could create. So, I mean, I think the original pioneers of the AI field operating before I was born and when I was a little kid were correct in fixating on the fundamental ability to generalize and take a leap into the future. Now, being able to generalize exactly as well as a human being is sort of arbitrary. That's like trying to make, a motor vehicle that can run faster than a human or something, right? I mean, human intelligence is a sort of arbitrary benchmark in the grand scheme of things. I mean, it's important economically,
Right.
And it's important to us for obvious reasons. But one of the things that I.J. Good did see correctly back in the 60s also was once your AI can generalize with human level capability, I mean, it's probably not too long before it can generalize with radically superhuman capability, right? And then in Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near, in 2005, the same year I published a book on AGI, I mean, Kurzweil said we'll get to basically human level AGI 2029 and superhuman AGI, super intelligence, the Singularity 2045. And I think now the idea of a 16-year gap between human level AGI and super intelligence seems probably too long to a lot of people because we can see now, well, hold on, like LLMs are already so good at math and science. Like if you have a human level AGI that adds on some agency and creativity and fact groundedness to what LLMs can already do, I mean, why would it take that thing 16 years to really launch the intelligence explosion?
So yeah, kind of along those lines, I know that you predicted something called baby AGI by by early 2025. It's so cute. We're at the end of the year, obviously. Where do we stand on this prediction? And what do we know about kind of some of your other predictions? Right, I think maybe 2029 as one point at one.
That's Kurzweil's prediction. I mean, Ray Kurzweil in his 2005 book,
Mm-hmm.
Singularity is Near, predicted we would get human level AGI by 2029. And in 2005, that seemed pretty far out there to a lot of people, right? And now you have some major company CEOs saying, no, that's too long. It's going to be 2027, right? And you have others saying, no, we're at least 10 years away from AGI. And now that brands you an AGI pessimist if you say it maybe 10 years off, right? So, I mean, I think in the big picture for writing in 2005, pinpointing 2029 was pretty good. But I mean, of course, none of us can predict the exact rate of development of these frontier technologies because they depend not just on the technology. I mean, they depend on the mood of the market and the venture community and government grant funding and so forth, right? Like it's pretty straightforward. If you understand the science and tech and conceptual aspects, it's pretty straightforward to see the sequence of what's possible. But how fast the sequences progress through depends on the human world as much as on the technology, right? And I mean, that's, I think, certainly the case with baby AGI. I mean, we could have had a baby AGI by now. It's not what the world has wanted to fund. I mean, we have Math Olympiad winning AGI right now, let me rephrase. We have Math Olympiad winning AI right now, right? And so we're progressing very fast in that regard. In terms of making artificial babies, it's not something the world has wanted to fund too much. So, I mean, the rate of development of different aspects of general intelligence depends on money and memetics as much as anything else. But I mean, I think on the whole, progress toward AGI is quite dramatic, right? I mean, I don't think LLMs are AGI. I don't think a bigger LLM in itself will become AGI. But I mean, I think if you look at what LLMs, when integrated with other kinds of software, can do, I mean, that functionality is getting closer and closer, and that certainly tells you something.
Sorry, going to butt in here real quick, but it's to throw a thank you to those of you who support us directly via Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting us, because you allow us to do this show. Patreon.com/AI Inside Show. You can support us, and I might read your name out on the show. We have a couple of new patrons, in fact. Tom Callahan, one of our newest patrons, and then another one, a familiar name to me because he's my cousin, Vince Welke. Vince, welcome to the AI Inside family. All right. So patreon.com/AI Inside Show. Thank you to everyone who supports us. You literally drive this show forward. Also driving this show forward is our sponsor today, Your 360 AI. Now, at this point, about 2.5-3 weeks ago, I invited Jared Goralnik, who's CEO of Your 360 AI, onto the AI Inside YouTube channel to show me his product. And I really found it super compelling, enough so that I'm actually doing the review process myself. I have a couple of reviews. I'm waiting on a few more, so I'm knee deep in the process. And Jeff is actually one of my feedback providers, so I'm going to hear from him. Also a few other friends, Ron Richards, Tom Merritt, names you might recognize. Anyways, I'm psyched for that. Here's what's really interesting though, lack of career development. It's the number one reason people quit a job. And yet most of us has never gotten feedback that's good enough to actually act upon. And that's certainly been true for me. Well, Your 360 does something that wasn't possible, a half year ago. And with the rapid pace of development in AI now, it is totally possible. It uses voice AI to conduct real conversations with you and your colleagues, just 15 to 20 minutes each. I did one. It was super, easy to do, drilling in on specifics, my wins or your wins, your growth areas, everything in between. Then it synthesizes all of that and then walks you through the findings step by step in a coaching conversation. If you happen to be a manager, it surfaces all of those patterns that happen to exist across your team that you might not normally see in a standard survey. A PM at Dropbox did call this the most helpful, actionable career advice they've ever gotten. Big words there. And so far, I totally get it. Start the year with real clarity at your360.ai. Use code INSIDE. You'll get 10% off through January 2026. That's your360.ai, code INSIDE for 10% off through this January 2026. And we thank them for their support of the AI Inside podcast. Okay, going to take a few minute break and then come back and get back to our interview with Ben Goertzel.
So LLMs, I agree with you. Not that I know anything or know nearly enough, but I think you're certainly not alone. That Jan LeCun has said that LLMs will not get us there, and others have said this as well. But LLMs have sucked oxygen and capital and research dollars out of the market and the world. You've talked about the need for neurosymbolic research. Jan is talking about world models. Where do you think the development and research and dollars should be going, if not instead, in addition now? Should there be a reallocation?
Yeah, so first of all, I haven't analyzed this from an economic standpoint, but I would guess that LLMs and their rise has probably increased funding for competing AI paradigms as well, beyond what it was before LLMs rose. So, I mean, I think, yes, LLMs suck up more of the AI R&D pie than they should. On the other hand, I think their success has expanded the pie very, very considerably. So I don't think it's true that research dollars for neural symbolic AI is less now than it was in 2021 or something before ChatGPT came out, right? Like I think it's probably more. It may be less proportionally, but probably more in absolute dollar terms. But that's a feeling. I haven't done the analysis there. I mean, I could say for my own work, which is not centrally LLM oriented, on the one hand, we're badly underfunded compared to major LLM efforts.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, we're significantly better funded than we were in 2021, right? And I think that's probably true across the board. That said, yeah, I do think the business world has a tendency to take whatever sort of works and just everybody piles on, right? Which is because of an inability to accept market risk more so than technology risk. And that's extremely true in Asia and most parts of the world. In the US, there's more willingness to take on technology risk within the business world, but still not much. I mean, still almost all investors would rather pile on to copying something else that's out there and putting a different marketing spin on it than on gambling on building something quite different. So, I mean, I think LLMs got to a very impressive and useful level of functionality before other AI paradigms. And so by the natural dynamics of modern capitalism, like those get piled onto like mad to a degree that's probably not rational. And I mean, then that's what you see across all areas of technology. Like why did internal combustion engines get all the dollars for making cars move, right? Until governments intervened and said, hold on, wait, there's electric, there's hydrogen, and so forth. Like internal combustion worked, you got an infrastructure around it, and no one wants to take a risk on something weird. So yeah, I think there's more than enough money spent on people copying each other's LLMs.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't need that many. We don't need that many LLMs with slight variations of the same functionality. I mean, I understand that's how capitalism works and that's how competition works. But I mean, there's loads of other very promising AI ideas and concepts that have been demonstrated at a smaller scale, right? And there should be more money going into scaling those things up also. I mean, there's logical reasoning, and I think neural symbolic, where you mix neural nets with logical reasoning, is about to get its interval in the sun, right? I saw a big blog post or article from Amazon this morning about all the ways they're using neural symbolic behind the scenes in AWS infrastructure. IBM, of course, has been working on it for a long time, but there's other things beyond logic and neural nets also. I mean, there's evolutionary programming, genetic algorithms, genetic programming. You simulate the process of evolution by natural selection inside the computer. And, John Koza was designing new circuit designs in the early aughts using genetic programming, maybe back to the late 90s, right? And I mean, for creativity, there's concept blending, there's algorithms for putting new ideas together inside the computer. There's long list of interesting AI techniques that have been shown to do cool things at the small scale. And there's not money going into scaling those up and seeing what they can do at the large scale, even though, we've seen what happened by taking deep neural networks trained by back propagation and running those at the large scale. They did amazing things beyond what they did at a smaller scale. But that's a little too abstract for the business world, right? Like what typical investors want to do is take exact things that worked, copy it, put a different brand on it, and market it. They don't want to say, okay, well, the methodology that worked was taking an AI tech that did something kind of interesting at the small scale and massively scaling it. So what other AI technologies that do kind of interesting things at the small scale can we massively scale, right? Like that's a very simple active abstraction relative to string theory or the theory of automated reasoning, but it's apparently too big a leap of abstraction for the investment community to take, which creates a tremendous opportunity for anyone who's willing to do something besides copy LLMs or build apps on top of LLMs, because there's a huge scope of interesting possibilities out there in the AI world just waiting to be scaled. And what I spent much of the last 3 years on is building up an open source software infrastructure for scaling up a wider variety of AI techniques, because I could see that this it's what needed to be done, and the venture funded corporate mainstream just isn't doing it.
Kind of touching back on the LLMs reaching AGI. I mean, I fully agree. I also believe, LLMs not going to lead to AGI necessarily, but I'm curious to know, because we've seen so much activity, so much energy in the LLM space in the last couple of years, if there's anything that you've seen, any benchmark, any capability that has challenged your, I don't know, challenged your mind on this topic in any way, understanding that, you probably still don't believe that it's going to happen, but is there anything that's pushing up against that even? And that's more than I expected.
Not remotely. No. I mean, no, I would say LLMs have given a lot of capabilities that were more than I expected. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, not in a way that makes me think they're going to be AGI capable. I think it's been hard throughout the whole history of AI to predict which things are AGI hard, meaning you need a human level AGI to do them, and which things can be done by clever tricks. Like the field has never been good at that. Like nobody thought in the 70s that chess or Go would be susceptible to simple tricks, even though checkers was, right? You had a world champion checkers player in the late 60s. I mean, people thought chess and Go were too hard for those simple tricks. And then when they succumbed to them, people are like, oh, yeah, guess all we needed was alpha beta pruning with faster hardware, right? So, I mean, people didn't see until the 70s that computer algorithms could outperform human traders, because people thought, well, there's an intuition you have about the mind of the market. But no, it turned out, relatively straightforward statistical algorithms can outperform almost all human traders. So none of us has been good at predicting which of the things that we do with a lot of deep thinking, creative general intelligence. None of us has been good at figuring out which of the things we do with a lot of general intelligence needs general intelligence when you do them in a computer, right? So, I mean, I think, if anything, I was surprised by the ability LLMs have to intuit human thinking in fuzzy domains. Like you could ask an LLM, like, what would a 25-year-old, not that religious Muslim from Tehran think about this love triangle situation in Cairo or something? And then it's so good at spelling out, what ethical judgment this or that kind of human would make about this or that situation. And that I would have guessed would require some more embodied thinking or more nuance. But on the other hand, in hindsight, you can see, okay, the internet has loads and loads and loads of relevant examples to extrapolate from. I'm a little less surprised by the ability of LLMs at programming and math, just because it's clear. Like, in the end, those are linguistic domains. Like, you have a huge corpus of code and of math online. And unless you're making really radical innovation and leaping way beyond what's known, okay, extrapolating from all the examples of code and math online should be possible. So, but to me, one of the big takeaways is, okay, yes, LLMs cannot leap very far beyond their training distribution. On the other hand, maybe 95% of human jobs don't require leaping very far beyond your training distribution. So like you may not need AGI to do almost everything that's done in the economy. And that wasn't so obvious to me before seeing LLMs, and it's fairly obvious now. Like you can take vision language action models and put them behind robots. You can integrate LLMs with various specialized statistical and rule-based systems, and probably without even getting to AGI, you can do 90% plus of the jobs that people get paid for. But that really just means that most of our jobs don't need much general intelligence, because they just involve imitating stuff that was done before. Nevertheless, if you can't do that 1 or 2% or whatever of human activity involves taking a big leap beyond your training data, I mean, then you don't have any advance, right? Like the fact that science, business, engineering, art, culture, the fact that these advance is because of that little bit of human activity that does involve taking creative leaps of generalization beyond history. And it's obvious LLMs will never do that. I mean, the way they're architected internally is not that. The way they're architected internally is like a huge artfully weighted collection of special cases from all the data that they've seen. They're not abstracting very much. And the key to radical generalization is radical abstraction. And that's not what LLMs are doing inside. And that's not a tweak. That requires a very different architecture.
I'd like to ask you about scale and open source. God bless you. You have been out there arguing that we can't allow this to entirely be controlled by a few corporations. We need open source distributed models. You've been building that. And that's going to require investment in open source. And we've seen examples of it happen. I mean, Apache and Linux grew. I think we can imagine that. But this smells different in terms of the compute and capital that's needed. And so to accomplish what you want to accomplish on open source, let me back up for a second. I attended a kind of debate between Adam Brown at DeepMind and Jan LeCun, soon to be ex Meta, a few weeks ago. And the Google view, the DeepMind view was more scale, the LLMs will get there. And of course, as you know, Jan is saying, no, we need a different paradigm. What I'm curious about is what it's going to take to accomplish what you want to accomplish, A, using open source, and B, is it going to require scale like Google is saying, or in fact, does it, in DeepMind sense, require less scale than people are imagining now? Are we over-investing in compute and data centers? What does this look like when people start paying attention to what you're saying and there's a shift?
It's a little complicated. I mean, I think that there's a lot of nuanced half-truths here. And again, the media tends to want to push to one extreme or another. So absolutely, scale is important, right? Like the late Marvin Minsky, one of the pioneers of AI, said to me once that he thought if you had the right algorithm, you could get human level AGI on an IBM 486 PC. And I mean, I think Marvin was just totally wrong about that, right? And I mean, I discussed this with his son, Henry Minsky, last year. And I mean, with all respect for his dad, I don't think Henry agreed with that sentiment. Whether Marvin would now, where he's still alive, I don't know either, right? So I think scale is important. And I mean, you can have an algorithm that you run on a megabyte of RAM. And when you run that same algorithm on a petabyte of RAM, you have complex self-organizing emergent phenomena that are causing the algorithm to do just qualitatively different stuff, right? And I mean, few-shot in-context learning in large transformer neural nets, which we see behind LLMs, is one example there, right? Like you don't see a lot of that at GPT-2 scale, but you start to see it at GPT 3.5 scale, right? So, I mean, that GPT-5 scale, Gemini scale, it's even more impressive phenomenon, right? So, I mean, Scale is important. On the other hand, that doesn't mean it's as important as big tech is now saying, right? So, I mean, yes, you're not going to run the first human level AGI on a laptop. On the other hand, does that mean Google isn't overestimating by a factor of 10 the amount of hardware that you need, right? That they probably are. They probably are overestimating it significantly, even if at the level of philosophy, they're kind of right. And I mean, Demis Hassabis and the DeepMind guys understand this nuance very, very thoroughly, right? I mean, they've to some extent they've been assimilated by Google, but I mean, I think I know those guys pretty well. That they have a quite deep understanding of these trade-offs, right? So I mean, I think in terms of investment in data centers, I mean, I think it's pretty clear everyone is under investing in data centers, even while normies think they're over investing. But it's not because you're going to need $1 trillion of servers to run GPT-7 or something. It's just that even though you can get AGI using fewer servers than the mainstream thinks, you're going to want a lot of AGIs doing a lot of different things. The AGI is going to take over the whole economy, right? So we're going to have much, much, much more efficient use of compute resources, but nevertheless, we're going to have much, much, much higher demand for compute resources because these efficient systems, as they move toward AGI, are just going to be doing more and more and more useful things. And again, I mean, the Google founders understand this. Demis and Shane at DeepMind understand this. Zuckerberg understands this. I mean, I think there's a more nuanced understanding behind the leaders of big tech than what gets projected out into the media.
Mm-hmm.
Well, along the lines of open, I'm really curious about this. We've heard.
Yeah, we didn't get into the open thing. That's
Yeah,
right.
I'm really eager to hear your views on that.
Yeah. Sam Altman just said last January, OpenAI has been, well, I think he put it like on the wrong side of history when it comes to open source. Then more recently, they've got GPT OSS. It's got open weights, no training data, no architecture details. I'm curious to know how this compares with what you mean by open. When you're talking open, how open by comparison to, I think there's just a lot of terminology share happening right now.
That terminology has been, to be fair, the terminology regarding open source has been a mess since before AI became so big, right? So, I mean, you had open source, you had FOSS, free and open source, you had Libre software with Richard Stallman and so on, right? So, and I mean, many open source zealots believe only the GPL is actually open, and Apache and MIT license aren't actually open. So that's always been complicated, but I think it's gotten even more complicated now, because now we're at a point where indeed opening the software code behind your AI system doesn't necessarily do that much. Like if you haven't opened your training data and your training data cleaning pipeline, and then if it takes $1 billion of servers to run the open code once you've cobbled together the training data, in effect, there's no way for anyone to leverage that open code before you release the next open code 6 months later, right? So, I mean, when you have things that require so much data and so much compute, as well as source code, then just opening the source code doesn't necessarily fulfill the spirit of open source, like even if it is literally open source. Yeah, I think what we need to achieve the sort of spiritual and philosophical and social goals of open source, what we need is more than just opening the code. You need to open the code. You need to explain what the data was and ideally give an open way to cobble together that data. And you need to give tooling that lets people roll out their own forks of the code on infrastructure in as flexible a way as possible, right? And I mean, if something just needs a huge amount of compute to run, then okay, so it does, but you can build infrastructure that lets people flexibly run it on different compute infrastructures, right? That doesn't require the exact parallel and distributed processing infrastructure you have on your server farms. And then there's the question of, are you trying to develop algorithms that could be run on a variety of compute infrastructures, or are you trying to develop algorithms that need, monolithic multi-billion-dollar server farms, right? And I think there's a sort of economic and sociological point here, which is big tech has every reason to promote AI methods that need massive amounts of data and massive monolithic server farms, right? Because as long as the AI field is focused on methods that need this sort of big data and big compute, then no one but big tech can compete, right? So big tech has a big disincentive to develop AI methods that need less data or less compute, or can run on more heterogeneous compute infrastructure. So what we need to be doing is developing AI methods that are designed to run on as little data as possible, as widely available data as possible, and that are designed to run on as flexible a variety of compute infrastructures as possible. And you need that together with open source code, and then you have something that's actually free and open and fosters global participation in the development of AGI. And this is what we're developing in my own AI projects. So of course, the OpenCog Hyperon project, which is building a neural symbolic evolutionary AI infrastructure for trying to build thinking machines going beyond just deep neural nets. And then SingularityNET, well, we built the SingularityNET decentralized multi-agent platform, and we're now building the ASI chain platform, which allow you to run Hyperon or other AI methods flexibly on, heterogeneous decentralized processor networks, right? Now you can't wave away compute requirements with good intentions entirely, right? So some aspects of AGI may just want a server farm where you have a bunch of multi-GPU, multi-CPU servers in a rack in one building. But there are clearly other aspects of AGI that could be run on like a mesh network of phones or on a bunch of people's laptops networked together in a decentralized way. And we should be seeing how much we can push into this radically decentralized infrastructure, and which kernels really do need to be on the server farm, and how much can you minimize the size of that server farm.
Hey everyone, pausing down for just a quick moment, just to remind you, we do have a YouTube channel. Maybe you're watching this interview on YouTube, on our channel. AI Inside Show is what you search for. If so, make sure you're subscribed, then you won't miss other interviews and our news episodes. And if not, if you're just listening to this in the podcast, hey, there's a whole video component that you're missing out on. And sometimes there's some really cool stuff that hits there. So go to YouTube, search for AI Inside Show, and subscribe so you don't miss them. All right, super quick break, then back to our interview with Dr. Goertzel.
I love your definition of open. I think it's very clear. Who else do you need to convince? Because we're worried about large companies, you're worried about government regulation, but you need help. Meta had Llama, we call it open-ish. We don't sure what Zuckerberg's going to do now, and others have things that are open-ish. But if you had the ability to get into people's heads, whose minds do you need to change? What do you need them to commit to make your vision possible?
There's probably three things that we need, right? So one thing is you need governments not to pass adverse regulations that allow capture of the AI field by by big tech, right? And ironically enough, Trump, whose politics I don't agree with across the board by any means, but Trump is so far being pretty beneficial in this regard, right? In avoiding the inaction of adverse regulations. And we saw attempts in this regard, like California not that long ago was considering regulations against open source AI that would basically have made it so that only big tech could have developed large neural models, right? And Trump has been against that, which I think is quite beneficial. It's not clear what will happen in Europe. So you need government not to just hand over AI to a few big companies and to allow open development to happen. That's one thing. You also need the development and research communities to jump on board, right? Like you need folks interested in AI on the R&D side and on the software hacking side to not just buy into, okay, well, this Python toolkit a big tech company gave me is really easy to use. It's fun. I can build a bunch of cool stuff with it. I will just join their ecosystem, right? You need the R&D community to be willing to deal with tools that are a little more raw and less polished, but that let you do AI in different ways and in an open and decentralized way. And I mean, Linux gives a beautiful path there, right? I mean, the Linux development tools have always been a little bit more of a pain than big tech development tools. Certainly, Microsoft Visual Debugger is beautiful. Like GNU Debugger is amazingly capable, but it takes a little more learning curve to get into a mind meld with it, right? But in spite of all these issues, there's a robust Linux development community, and this has led to a lot of amazing things, right? Linux dominates the internet. Linux dominates mobile globally, and this is on an open foundation, and Linux cuts across political divides. It's for better and worse, like it's powering servers in North Korea and Iran and China as well as Finland, where Linus Torvalds was, and here, right? So we need that community. And then finally, the third thing is you do need money, right? You don't need as much money to do things open and decentralized as you need to do things closed and centralized, because you can get people to participate from a variety of different business models. You can leverage universities in a different way. You can work globally rather than just in high-cost tech hubs. But in the end, if we need only $200 or $300 million of hardware to run the first AGI, and it's okay if it's divided among 30 different locations and smaller server farms rather than in just one, that's still a few $100 million of hardware you need for your AGI, right? And so that comes down to my point that yes, we can make it cheaper and less insanely bloated than big tech is doing. On the other hand, it's still going to need a bunch of machines, right? Like there's a limit to that. So you do need funding. And my own AGI efforts since 2018 have been funded through the cryptocurrency world, through our AGIX token, and now through the Fetch and ASI token. And that's been interesting. It's been distracting in some ways, but it's brought my AI efforts in touch with a community that is in favor of openness and
right,
decentralization, as well as having some other weird characteristics you find in the crypto world. But I don't know if the crypto sphere is going to be enough or going to be where all the funding of the open decentralized AI revolution happens, right? And so there's some uncertainty there. And anyway, we need these three things to line up. I mean, we need the regulation not to stop us. We need the communities, and we need the funding for the hardware infrastructure, which still is considerable. I mean, even though not as big as big tech is trying to make you think it is.
So, in full disclosure, I'm a fake academic and I'm a fake AI person. I'm just a journalism professor. So I snuck in through side doors. But I had the privilege of working at Stony Brook University on a new program in technology, AI, and society. And it's a STEM university, and it's fascinating to watch the real geniuses. If you were a young person, if you were a senior in college or a young graduate student, what would you, and you have people like Jensen Huang out there saying, stop teaching computer science. What would you advise a young person now to focus on, knowing that this future is here, whether it's in computers or otherwise? Give your advice to the next generation.
And you know, my niece, who's 13, and her friends are chewing over this sort of question. They're like,
yeah,
is college going to be there when we get to college? Or like, what should we be studying? What jobs will still exist when I get out of college, right? And I mean, on a personal level, the best advice I can give them is like, first of all, you might as well do something that you enjoy and are passionate about, because then at least you have that. You were fulfilled and rewarded along the way. Secondly, you know, become good at learning new things and adapting and pivoting, right? Because clearly the world is going to require that of you. Like, don't get in any one rut, no matter how appealing or lucrative it may seem at that moment, because any rut you get into is under serious risk of being disrupted and randomized, like before you know it. And I'm also a strong advocate of getting the foundations, like learn mathematics if you like tech, right? Learn the laws of physics, you know, read the classics of literature and philosophy. Like the basics are still going to be the basics of nature, mathematics, and human experience, right? And so that, I think that's certainly enough to keep young people busy. But what you don't have now is, okay, if I major in business or major in computer science, like my career is set. Like that era,
yep,
that era is gone. And it's also like, okay, become a plumber or an electrician and you'll always make money. Because I mean, the plumbing bots are not far off, right? So I think on the whole, though, most young people I encounter are pretty open-minded and will be relieved if they don't have to get a job and earn a living, and the AGIs create abundance for all before they grow up, right? The people I see hand-wringing more about this are like middle-aged white men, like who are like, oh, what if I'm no longer in my power and money position? How will I feel important, right?
I thought I had this all figured out.
As a middle-aged white man, I mean, I agree, yes.
The problem that really worries me is more like when the early stage AGI has rolled out, but isn't yet a superintelligence that can give abundance for all. So like in that interim period between early stage AGI and superintelligence, who gives universal basic income in the Congo or Ethiopia or Afghanistan, right? Like I sort of think once the early stage AGI takes most of the jobs, social welfare systems in the developed world will kick in. I mean, even if not exactly universal basic income, something in that spiritual direction. The thing is, no one wants to give an economic helping hand in the developing world. And so what happens when the middle class jobs in the developing world are taken? What happens when the factory in the outskirts of Addis Ababa, where Ethiopian guys assemble shoes for a Chinese company, what happens when that shuts down because robots are cheaper at assembling shoes than young African guys are, right? I mean, then once you get super intelligence, which brings abundance on Earth, I mean, then, okay, drones will come and airdrop molecular nanoassemblers in everyone's farm, right? But in the interim between AI takes 90% of the jobs and super AI airdrops molecular nanoassemblers in everyone's farm, like what happens in that interim period in the developing world? Does everyone go back to subsistence farming? Then they have no way to buy antibiotics or power their cell phone, right? So, I mean, I think, and then the ethical dilemma is to minimize suffering in between early stage AGI and superintelligence. You would want the superintelligence to come really fast, but to maximize the odds that the superintelligence comes out beneficial instead of otherwise, you don't want to hurry the path from early stage AGI to superintelligence. And this is where things will get really, really interesting. We're now in the pre-phase where we don't have early stage AGI yet, but I do think Kurzweil's prediction of 2029 for human level AGI is probably roughly right. Like it could be 2027, it could be 2031. I don't think that's off by decades though. But I think neither he nor anyone else predicted well what's going to happen in that period right after the early stage AGI. And that's where we will need all the compassion and all the mental agility that we can muster.
Fascinating stuff. One thing is certain, there is change on the horizon, and it's probably not that far off.
It's not that far off, but still during the few years before early stage AGI, there's a lot of interesting things to do. There's a lot of ways to make money if you're in business by picking the right niches that are going to be revolutionized by proto AGI technology one year versus the other year. And as a technologist, it's just so much fun, right? Because you've got logic-based systems, you've got evolutionary learning, you've got concept blending, you've got different sorts of databases and operating systems, and it's so much faster to go from concept to realization now, partly because of LLM development tools, right? And it's the time when we get to see all the ideas from the last half century in the AI and computer science world actually work and actually get deployed at scale to practical effect, right? So I mean, it's a very, very cool time to be working on these things.
And very, very cool to be able to talk to you about this as a pioneer, and I'm grateful you took your time for us.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for your time, Ben Goertzel. This was a real honor and a pleasure to get the chance to hear more about AGI from the guy who coined the terms.
Thanks for the good questions and the chance to share.
Just a huge thank you again to our guest, Ben Goertzel. Fascinating conversation. I knew it would be. When we were booking this, I was like, oh, this is going to be really, really interesting. And I mean, you can't get much better than the guy who created the terminology of AGI, something that everybody's throwing around right now, and that means so much, carries so much weight in AI. So thank you to Ben and team for allowing us to do this. Thanks to Jeff Jarvis, of course, jeffjarvis.com. Go there, find all his books, make sure and buy them. Stoke Jeff out. He will really appreciate if you do that. Everything you need to know about this particular show, AI Inside, can be found on our site. That's AIinside.show. And finally, if you really, really love this show and you want to support us on a deeper level, we've got a lot of you. We could use more. Patreon.com/AIinsideshow. You get ad-free episodes. You get access to a Discord community. You get occasional giveaways. Now, I did mention last week that on this week's episode, I had a few items that I was going to give away. So I've got like this Google Found It hat for search. I've got an AI mode t-shirt, which is actually pretty cool. Once I put this up, I was like, do I really want to give that away? But it's too late. I can't take it back. I've got a Google DeepMind t-shirt as well. So 3 pieces of swag. And I did go through all of our patrons, both paid and free. It's entirely open for the 3 winners. And I selected 3. Now I'm going to tell you right off the top, the first winner happens to be, and I swear this was totally random, happens to be my nephew, Christian Blazer. So Christian, buddy, it's been a little while. I haven't seen you, but I'm going to go ahead and send you this hat. So I hope you like wearing Google hats, because there you go. The AI mode t-shirt going to Robert Friesky. I think that's how you pronounce your last name. Robert, you're going to get a t-shirt. And the DeepMind t-shirt going to Tom Ruffley. Thank you all so much for your support throughout this year. I say it a lot and I mean it. I'm going to say it again. We couldn't do this show without your direct support. Like, it is one of many ways that we continue to foster and build the health of this show and make it run, essentially. So thank you for doing that. Mailing out a few brand new pieces of Google swag is probably the least that I could do, but I'm happy to give back in some way, shape, or form. To those of you who did win, I'm going to DM you or text message you if you're a Christian with all the information so that I can send this out to you. And, it's going to happen after Christmas. But anyway, speaking of swag, wow, this is a lot at the end of the show, but hey, we don't go this long at the end of the show very often. You can get an AI Inside t-shirt if you like. All you got to do is become an executive producer, and we have 10 of them right now. Dr. Do, Jeffrey Maricini, Radio Asheville 103.7, Dante St. James, Bono Day Rick, Jason Neifer, Jason Brady, Anthony Downs, Mark Starcher, and Karsten Smachke. Thank you for supporting this show and enabling us to do this. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. We will see you next week on a day earlier, actually on Tuesday, since it is, right up on New Year's Eve. We're going to do a normal news episode, Jeff and I, next Tuesday on another episode of the AI Inside podcast. Whew, see you then.